told you, your dog pretending to be a friend violated the sanitation law. Go, now!
Sir, this is a trained and fully licensed service dog.
Bar manager, kicked out. Disabled veteran. Then veteran bikers at next table stood up. Your fake dog is violating health codes. Out, now! Manager Kyle Stevens pointed at Marine veteran Frank Chen's service dog Zeus. Frank gripped his wheelchair tighter, his prosthetic arm trembling. Stevens had no idea 12 rolling thunder bikers at the corner booth had just heard every word and recognized the Marine who'd saved their brothers in Fallujah. Former Staff Sergeant Frank Chen, 34, lost his arm and both legs to an IED blast while pulling wounded Marines to safety. Murphy's Sports Bar was his monthly refuge after brutal VA appointments. Without Zeus, panic attacks would destroy him completely. Road Captain Steele Rodriguez set down his beer, recognizing Frank's Marine patches across the crowded bar. 12 veteran bikers had ridden together for Sunday meetings for 8 years. Today, they'd ride for justice. Staff Sergeant Frank Chen served 3 tours in Iraq, with the 2nd Marines earning the Silver Star and Purple Heart through actions that saved 17 Marines, but cost him his right arm and both legs below the knee. The IED blast in Fallujah came during his squad's final patrol, a massive explosion that Frank absorbed while shielding wounded Marines from secondary explosions. Zeus, his German Shepherd service dog, was trained specifically for Frank's PTSD mobility assistance and medical alert capabilities. The dog detected panic attacks before Frank recognized symptoms, provided balance support during transfers, and created psychological security that allowed Frank to function in civilian environments. Murphy's Sports Bar represented normalcy, a monthly tradition after VA appointments where Frank could watch games, eat familiar food, and feel like a regular customer, rather than a damaged veteran requiring special accommodation. The corner table near the emergency exit minimized his anxiety, while Zeus provided constant psychological support. His prosthetic arm and wheelchair were visible reminders of service sacrifice, but Zeus was his lifeline to independent civilian life. Kyle Stevens, 28, had managed Murphy's for 6 months, focused on profit margins and regulatory compliance, without understanding disability accommodation laws or veteran culture. His business degree emphasized efficiency and customer turnover. Disabled patrons required extra accommodation that complicated operations. Stevens had never served in the military, viewing veteran customers as potential liability issues rather than honored guests who'd sacrificed for American freedom. Service dogs represented health code violations in his limited understanding, despite federal protections that superseded local restaurant regulations. His management philosophy prioritized appearance over compliance, profits over people, and convenience over constitutional protections that he'd never studied or understood. Rolling Thunder, Chapter 47, met every Sunday at Murphy's 12 veteran bikers representing Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, and Gulf War service. Their leather vests displayed military patches, combat ribbons, and motorcycle club insignia that told stories of brotherhood forged in combat zones and sustained through decades of civilian transition challenges. Road Captain Rodriguez maintained contact with 47 motorcycle clubs across the Southwest, creating veteran support networks that responded to emergencies with military precision. Sir Zeus is a certified service dog with proper documentation, Frank explained calmly, showing his federal service dog identification and VA medical letters that established Zeus's essential role in his disability management. Stevens snatched the documents, examining them with theatrical skepticism designed to create public spectacle. These papers are easier to fake than parking passes. Your dog is shedding, drooling, and violating multiple health codes. Zeus is trained, certified, and legally protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Frank replied, his military bearing intact despite growing humiliation. I don't care about your sob story, hero. This is a restaurant, not a VA hospital. Stevens' voice carried across the crowded bar, drawing attention from other patrons who began recording the confrontation with phones. Zeus sensed Frank's rising anxiety, positioning himself to provide stability. As Frank's PTSD symptoms began manifesting: rapid breathing, trembling hands, hypervigilance, scanning for exits. The service dog's training kicked in, performing deep pressure therapy that kept Frank grounded. Look at that, the fake veteran is having a fake panic attack with his fake service dog. Academy Award performance right there. The cruelty was deliberate, designed to humiliate Frank into leaving without forcing Stevens to understand disability law or veteran rights. Stevens signaled his two bouncers, both college athletes hired for intimidation rather than legal knowledge or veteran sensitivity. Guys, escort our disabled hero and his pet to the parking lot. He's disrupting other customers. Frank's hands gripped his wheelchair wheels, Zeus alert and protective as strangers approached with obvious hostility. The crowded bar became a combat zone in Frank's PTSD-triggered mind. Multiple threats, limited exits, nowhere to maneuver. This is discrimination against a disabled veteran, called out Jessica Martinez from a nearby table, her phone recording the entire encounter. That's a legitimate service dog performing medical assistance. Other patrons began voicing support, creating a tense atmosphere where Stevens realized his actions were being documented by dozens of witnesses. The viral potential made him double down rather than back down. Lady, mind your own business. This fake soldier brought a health hazard into my establishment. The bar's Sunday crowd included several veterans who recognized Frank from VA appointments and community events, their anger building as they witnessed systematic discrimination against a decorated combat veteran whose sacrifice was visible in his disabilities. Frank closed his eyes, finding the center that had carried him through IED explosions and firefights in urban Iraq. When he opened them, his voice carried the steady authority of a non-commissioned officer who'd led Marines through hell. Manager Stevens, I've presented proper documentation. Zeus is performing medical tasks that prevent psychological crisis. Federal law protects our presence here. Federal law doesn't trump my property rights, wheelchair boy. You're trespassing. The insult hit Frank like incoming mortar rounds, each word designed to wound deeper than shrapnel. His prosthetic arm trembled not from mechanical malfunction, but from controlling rage that military discipline barely contained. Zeus performed alerting behavior, recognizing Frank's escalating PTSD symptoms and positioning himself to provide psychiatric assistance that could prevent complete psychological breakdown. Please, sir, I just want to watch the game and eat dinner like any other customer, then go to restaurants that cater to your limitations. This is a real establishment for real people. The rumble of motorcycle engines in the parking lot was already beginning to shake Murphy's windows. Rolling thunder had heard enough, and 12 combat veterans were about to deliver justice with the same precision they'd shown in overseas combat zones. Road Captain Steele Rodriguez stood from the corner booth with the deliberate movements of someone who'd survived 3 tours in Vietnam and understood when brotherhood was threatened. At 67, his leather vest displayed Silver Star, Bronze Star, and Vietnam service ribbons that told stories of combat most patrons couldn't comprehend. Brothers, that's Frank Chen from the VA support group, the Marine who saved half a platoon in Fallujah. His voice carried across the table where 11 other veteran bikers immediately recognized the name and situation. The one who threw himself on the IED asked Gunner, Williams' Iraq war veteran, whose own disabilities were hidden beneath his motorcycle leathers. Same Marine, and that manager just called him a fake veteran with a fake service dog. The transformation around the corner booth was immediate and visceral. Peaceful Sunday meeting became tactical response as 12 combat veterans recognized a brother under attack. Military training that never truly fades kicked in with automatic precision. Iron Horse, call the chapter network. Let them know we have a veteran under assault at Murphy's. Rodriguez ordered. Phoenix, Tucson, and Flagstaff chapters need to know what's happening here. Within minutes, the Rolling Thunder Network was activated across Arizona veteran bikers, mounting Harley-Davidsons with the same urgency they'd shown responding to troops in contact calls in combat zones overseas. The 12 bikers approached Frank's table with military bearing that made other patrons instinctively step aside. Their leather vests created a walking museum of American military service, Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, Gulf War, Bosnia, Iraq, Afghanistan, representing 5 decades of combat experience defending America overseas. Staff Sergeant Chen Rodriguez addressed Frank with proper military courtesy. Rolling Thunder, Chapter 47 respectfully requests permission to assist with this situation. Frank's eyes filled with recognition and relief. Road Captain, I'd be grateful for any help you can provide. The bikers formed protective formation around Frank's wheelchair, Zeus alert but calming as he recognized the decreased threat level. Stevens and his bouncers found themselves facing veterans whose combined combat experience exceeded anything they'd ever encountered. Manager Stevens, Rodriguez's command voice, had once directed artillery strikes in Vietnam. You're harassing a decorated Marine veteran whose service dog is federally protected. Explain your actions. Stevens stammered, suddenly realizing he was surrounded by men whose military bearing suggested capabilities far beyond weekend motorcycle rides. This is private property. Private property subject to federal disability accommodation laws that you're violating, interrupted Doc Peterson, former Navy corpsman and current paralegal specializing in veterans' rights. The atmosphere in Murphy shifted dramatically as other patrons realized they were witnessing 12 combat veterans defending a disabled brother from systematic discrimination. You bikers need to leave before I call the police, Stevens threatened, but his voice cracked as he faced men who'd survived real danger and weren't intimidated by civilian authority. Call them, Rodriguez replied calmly. They'll explain federal disability law and civil rights violations. Some of those officers are veterans who understand what this Marine sacrificed for your freedom. More motorcycles arrived outside the rumble of Harley-Davidson engines, announcing additional Rolling Thunder members responding to the emergency call. The parking lot filled with veteran bikers whose presence transformed Murphy's atmosphere from hostile to protective. This is getting out of hand, Stevens muttered, realizing his discrimination was being witnessed by growing crowds of veterans whose loyalty to their disabled brother exceeded any concern about property rights or management authority. It got out of hand when you called a Silver Star recipient a fake veteran. Williams replied his own combat decorations visible on his vest. Frank Chen pulled 6 Marines out of a burning Humvee after an IED blast. He lost his arm and legs, saving our brothers. The crowd of patrons, now understanding the full context of Stephen's discrimination, began voicing support for Frank and condemnation of management's actions. Social media posts were already going viral documenting systematic harassment of a disabled combat hero. Stevens realized he was facing more than just 12 angry bikers. He was confronting the entire veteran community's protective instincts activated by injustice against one of their own. The intervention came from an unexpected source, Regional Manager Patricia Santos, entering Murphy's just as the confrontation reached peak intensity. Her own military bearing was immediately apparent to the veteran bikers who recognized officer authority when they saw it. "What exactly is happening in my establishment?" Santos demanded, surveying the tactical formation of 12 bikers protecting a disabled veteran while her manager cowered behind security personnel. "Ma'am," Rodriguez responded with military courtesy, "your manager is discriminating against Staff Sergeant Frank Chen, a decorated Marine veteran with a federally protected service dog. He's violated multiple civil rights statutes and humiliated a combat hero." Santos examined Frank's documentation with professional competence that revealed her own military background. "Staff Sergeant, I'm Colonel Patricia Santos, United States Army Reserve. These documents are completely valid, and your service dog is performing essential medical tasks." Stevens went pale, realizing he was facing his regional supervisor who outranked him professionally and militarily. "Ma'am, I was just enforcing health codes." "You were violating federal law while humiliating a Marine who sacrificed his limbs saving other Americans. Your health code excuse demonstrates complete ignorance of disability accommodation requirements." The veteran bikers watched with satisfaction as military authority intervened on behalf of their brother. Santos's command presence filled the room with the same authority that had once directed logistical operations in Iraq. "Stevens, you're suspended immediately pending investigation. Security escort him off the property. Staff Sergeant Chen, you and your service dog have permanent reserved seating in this establishment." Colonel Santos conducted an immediate investigation that revealed Stevens' pattern of discriminating against disabled customers, military veterans, and anyone requiring accommodation that inconvenienced his profit-focused management style. "Gentlemen," she addressed the Rolling Thunder bikers with military respect, "thank you for protecting our Marine brother. Your intervention prevented a civil rights violation that would have destroyed this company's reputation and exposed us to federal lawsuits." The investigation uncovered Stevens' systematic violations, refusing service to wheelchair users, rejecting service dogs despite proper documentation, and targeting veteran customers whose disabilities required minimal accommodation that Stevens viewed as operational burdens. "Staff Sergeant Chen, on behalf of Murphy's corporate leadership, I offer our complete apology and lifetime comp privileges for you and any veteran organizations you represent. Your service earned respect that you should never have been denied." Frank's voice was steady, but emotional. "Ma'am, I just wanted to watch football and eat dinner without being treated like a burden." These brothers from Rolling Thunder reminded me that veterans never stand alone. The bar's patrons, many now understanding the full scope of Stephen's discrimination, began approaching Frank to express support and admiration for his service. The viral videos spreading across social media showed the veteran community's protective response to discrimination against their most vulnerable members. Dr. Martinez, a civilian patron, approached Frank's table. "Sergeant, I'm a VA psychologist. What you experienced today was institutional discrimination that violates federal law. I'd be honored to document this for civil rights authorities." Colonel Santos implemented immediate policy changes that transformed Murphy's from a discriminatory environment into a veteran-friendly establishment that became a model for accommodating disabled patrons throughout the hospitality industry. Effective immediately, all Murphy's locations will receive mandatory training on disability accommodation, veteran recognition, and service dog regulations. Staff Sergeant Chen's experience will never be repeated in any establishment I supervise. The Rolling Thunder bikers were offered permanent meeting space at Murphy's, creating a visible veteran presence that deterred future discrimination while providing community support for disabled veterans facing similar challenges. Murphy's corporate headquarters issued public statements condemning discrimination, establishing veteran hiring preferences, and creating partnerships with veteran service organizations that transformed company culture from profit-focused to service-oriented. Stevens represented everything wrong with civilian attitudes toward veteran sacrifice. Santos explained to media outlets covering the story. "Our veterans deserve respect, accommodation, and recognition, not humiliation from those they protected." Federal civil rights attorneys took interest in Stevens' systematic discrimination pattern, opening investigations that would prevent similar violations in hospitality establishments nationwide. The viral videos showing veteran bikers defending their disabled brother became symbols of military brotherhood that transcends service periods, inspiring communities nationwide to protect veterans facing discrimination in civilian settings. Frank's monthly tradition at Murphy's resumed with permanent reserved seating, lifetime meal privileges, and the knowledge that 12 brothers would always have his back. Within 24 hours, Kyle Stevens was terminated from Murphy's corporate structure and blacklisted from hospitality management throughout the Phoenix metropolitan area. His discrimination against a disabled veteran became a case study in corporate training programs nationwide. Frank's story spread through veteran networks with the velocity of military communications, inspiring disabled veterans to report similar discrimination while encouraging veteran communities to protect their most vulnerable members from predatory business practices. Murphy's corporate transformed overnight into Arizona's most veteran-friendly establishment, implementing the Chen Protocol, comprehensive accommodation procedures that exceeded federal requirements while creating welcoming environments for disabled veterans and their service animals. Rolling Thunder, Chapter 47 became Murphy's permanent Sunday presence, creating visible veteran support that deterred discrimination while providing community networking for veterans facing civilian transition challenges. Most importantly, Frank's dignity was restored publicly with corporate apologies, lifetime privileges, and the knowledge that his military brotherhood would always defend him against civilian prejudice and institutional discrimination. The National Restaurant Association adopted Murphy's accommodation protocols as industry standards training hospitality managers on veteran recognition, disability law compliance, and service dog regulations that protected businesses while serving disabled patrons appropriately. Frank became a federal consultant speaking to hospitality industry conferences about veteran accommodation and disability rights. His presentations reached thousands of managers, creating cultural shifts that improved treatment of disabled veterans nationwide. Congressional Veterans Affairs committees used Frank's case to strengthen civil rights protections, creating enhanced penalties for systematic discrimination against disabled veterans in commercial establishments. The Rolling Thunder Network established rapid response protocols in 37 states, creating veteran biker networks that responded to discrimination emergencies with the same precision they'd shown in military operations. Murphy's quarterly profits increased 34% after implementing veteran-friendly policies, proving that inclusive business practices generated revenue while serving communities that protected American freedom overseas. Frank's monthly Murphy's tradition became a symbol of veteran inclusion, with Rolling Thunder meetings growing from 12 to 47 regular attendees representing all service branches and combat eras. Zeus became the unofficial Murphy's mascot, his presence reminding staff and patrons that service dogs perform essential medical functions for disabled veterans who've sacrificed for American freedom. The corner table where Frank was humiliated now bears a plaque reading, "Reserved for America's heroes, all veterans welcome service dogs, honored discrimination, never tolerated." Road Captain Rodriguez established mentorship programs connecting disabled veterans with motorcycle clubs, providing transportation advocacy and brotherhood that bridged military service with civilian community support. Frank's wheelchair became a platform for advocacy, rather than a symbol of limitation, demonstrating that disability couldn't diminish honor earned through military service or respect deserved by those who'd sacrificed for America. The Chen precedent revolutionized disability accommodation in American hospitality industries. Federal agencies created oversight positions monitoring civil rights compliance in veteran-related commercial discrimination cases. Frank addressed restaurant management conferences monthly. Disabled veterans didn't sacrifice overseas to be humiliated in American businesses. Service dogs aren't inconveniences, they're medical equipment that enables independence. The National Restaurant Association developed training protocols recognizing service-connected disabilities, proper service dog accommodation, and federal legal protections governing veteran business interactions. Federal funding supported accessibility improvements in hospitality establishments, ensuring that disabled veterans could participate fully in civilian commercial activities without facing discrimination disguised as policy enforcement. Corporate insurance policies now include civil rights violation coverage, making discrimination financially unsustainable, while encouraging inclusive business practices that served disabled veteran communities appropriately. Frank Chen discovered that his military sacrifice, once mocked in commercial humiliation, became the foundation for protecting thousands of disabled veterans facing similar discrimination in civilian establishments nationwide. His advocacy work helped hospitality businesses understand that veteran accommodation generated positive publicity and increased revenue while serving communities that had sacrificed for American freedom. Murphy's Sports Bar once a source of traumatic discrimination, became his advocacy headquarters where he trained managers, educated communities, and demonstrated that disabled veterans deserved respect equal to their service sacrifice. Frank enjoys monthly meals surrounded by rolling thunder brotherhood, knowing that his victory over discrimination protected countless veterans from predators hiding behind business licenses instead of foreign enemies. The Murphys incident proved that veteran brotherhood transcends service periods extending into civilian communities where former military personnel defend each other against systematic discrimination and commercial prejudice. Frank learned that the same courage required for combat service was needed for civilian justice, standing against discrimination, even when facing institutional bias and commercial authority. Honor earned through military service cannot be diminished by civilian discrimination. When veteran communities unite against injustice, they defend disabled brothers and sisters with the same ferocity they showed defending America overseas. In the end, Frank Chen learned that the same Marines who would have died for him in Fallujah were equally prepared to defend him in American bars and restaurants. The battlefield changes, but the oath to protect each other remains eternal, whether facing foreign enemies or domestic discrimination.